So, hey guys, today we have Adhavan Sundaramurthy with us, and he'll be sharing his thesis, Tamizh Futurism, which was displayed in and around this, United States of America and also around Canada. He actually graduated as a civil engineer from the College of Engineering Guindy, and then he shifted to Los Angeles to enroll in SCI-Arc for his master's in architecture, and now he's practicing as an architect there, and simultaneously working on his realm of world building called Tamil Futurism, and he's developing it beyond architecture. And now let's hear from himself on what he has to say about what is Tamil Futurism actually. Okay, Anna, you can go ahead.
Okay. Hey everyone. Nice to meet you. Hope everyone is safe and staying indoors. Before I get into the presentation, I have some shout outs. First of all, thanks to Sanjeev to bring into my notice about the organization called Seed. Um, if not for him, எனக்கு கண்டிப்பா இது தெரிஞ்சிருக்காது இது என்னன்ட்டு. Um, only after he showed me, I went through the entire YouTube channel. I went through what kind of initiatives they are taking, and man, trust me, it's amazing. The efforts that you guys are putting in is insane. And I listened to every single speech that was posted on YouTube, and I want to mention those names just to give a shout out to them. It started with Srihari, and then there was Devesh, there was Mohammad Ashish, Kirtana, Srivardhan, Sabrish Suresh, Hamza Sheikh, Binson, and lastly Soundarya Armugam. நான் இந்த வீடியோஸ் எல்லாம் பார்க்கும்போது எனக்கு என்ன தோணுச்சுன்னா, except for certain people, the rest of them are your seniors, right? People
Yeah,
who graduated from Satyabama, if my understanding is right. So I felt like I was getting a sneak peek into a very connected, well connected family where the seniors are trying to take care of juniors. That's a really beautiful relationship that I saw there. And thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to enter into your world, your family. Uh, and trust me, the bar has been set really high by these speakers who spoke before me. So I'm trying my level best to uh, reach that bar. But let's see how this goes. And let me start sharing my screen. Okay. Let me know if you can see my screen.
yeah, we can see it, Anna.
All right. I want to start with a small video. Fortunately or unfortunately, the audio is not working. It says it's sharing though.
Yeah, some can see. I think I was able to see that screen.
It's visible. It's visible.
Should I
Yeah,
can I try sharing it once again and see if it works?
yeah, sure, Anna. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let me know if you can see. I'll go ahead.
Yeah, it's
Can you?
visible.
Can see it.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. Everyone visible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right. Before I get into the presentation, I want to share this video. It's a 1 minute video, full cup. How do you expect me to teach you kung fu? Because you already know something called kung fu, which is more like a preconceived notion of what you have inside your head. So empty your cup, and then you can start learning kung fu. That's pretty much what happened in that scene. Why I am saying that is, if in case you have come across what Tamil Futurism is, or if in case you have any kind of expectation out of this talk, just keep all that aside. Wait, I see it raising a hand. Is anything wrong? Anyone?
No, you can just carry on. I think by mistake it has clicked on.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, okay, that's all right. So what I was trying to say is, if in case you have any preconceived notions, if in case you have any kind of expectations out of this talk, let's keep that all aside for a second. Just empty your mind, take away everything, and let's start with a fresh mind and see where this conversation goes. So, yeah, like I mentioned before, the speakers who spoke before me set the bar really high. So exactly don't know where I have to start. Tamil futurism na enna, Tamil futurism la na enna pannenu சொல்றதுக்கு முன்னாடி I wanted to give a glimpse of my journey so that you will be able to relate to Tamil futurism in a better way. எங்க ஸ்டார்ட் பண்றது அப்படின்னு நான் யோசிச்சுட்டு இருக்கும்போது what other way do we have other than going for the classic good old question, what is architecture? இந்த கேள்விக்குடைய பதில் தேடி தான் என் ஜேர்னியை தொடங்குச்சு. ஆனா at some point when I was thinking about it, or when I was trying to explore this realm, I was getting so many answers for this question. நமக்கு எப்பவுமே என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காங்கன்னா there's only one right answer to any question அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரியான ஒரு மைண்ட் செட்ல தான் I was being exposed. So when I was trying to find the right answer for this question, I wasn't able to, because every single answer that I got from different person made sense to me. So, starting with Wikipedia. Wikipedia says architecture is both the process and the product of planning, designing, and constructing buildings or other structures. Architectural works in the material form of buildings are often perceived as cultural symbols and as works of art. So it makes sense. Adhikappuram, these are three different architects who I had an opportunity to work with at SCI-Arc, and these are the definitions of what architecture is according to them. And then it goes further. It goes further, and it goes further, and then it goes even further, and it goes even further. So what is architecture ன்ற definition ஒரு database collect பண்ணி பேசணும்னா I think that specific conversation can go for more than 24 hours. But then at some point I realized there's no one right answer to this question. I also felt like what is architecture ன்ற questionே ஒரு incomplete ஆன ஒரு question இருக்குமோ அப்படினு I personally felt. So in order to complete that question, what I did was just this. It makes a huge difference. What is architecture is completely different from what is architecture to you. And I think for every architect, அவங்களுடைய வாழ்க்கையுடைய ஜர்னி என்னன்னா இந்த ஒரு கேள்வியினுடைய பதில் தேடி போகக்கூடிய ஒரு ஒரு பாத், ஒரு டிராவல் தான் வந்து அவங்களுடைய என்டையர் கரியர் நினைக்கிறேன். And I really liked what Hamza, who one of your previous speakers mentioned. It's an open book, and it's your duty and responsibility to fill a page on your behalf. Can't copy others. You can get inspired, obviously, but you know that's what defines who you are as an architect. So on that note, in the presentation என்னன்னா what is architecture to me அப்படிங்கிற கேள்வியினுடைய பதில் தேடி நான் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ண ஜேர்னினுடைய certain glimpses what this presentation is going to be. Tamil future. So before I get into Tamil futurism, I want to tap on certain moments here. How it all started. 2016 August, a boy from Chennai, finished my undergrad in civil engineering. I was also a co-founder of an architecture firm called Dot Architecture and Design Studios, based in Chennai. It was started in the year 2013. It's still in existence. The start funding, I wanted to do my master's in architecture in LA. It started there. But என்னுடைய overall childhood வந்து பார்த்தோம்னா I was very exposed to the culture of Tamil, because என் தாத்தா வந்து ஒரு தமிழ் புலவர், ராமலிங்கம் சொல்லிட்டு. He's published more than 30 books. And நாங்க வீட்ல என்ன படிக்கிறோமோ இல்லையோ, one mandatory book that we all have to study is or read, not study, read is திருக்குறள். ஸோ தமிழனுடைய புலமைகள், தமிழனுடைய சிறப்புகள், தமிழ் வந்து one of the oldest languages human civilization has ever spoken. Tamil is one of the 7 classical languages of the world. Tamil is being celebrated as an official language in countries other than India, and Canada has an entire month dedicated for Tamil called Tamil Heritage Month. So இந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு பெர்ஸ்பெக்டிவ்ல, இந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு attitude தான் I moved out of Chennai, thinking okay, everyone knows Tamil, everyone knows Chennai, everyone knows Tamil அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு மைண்ட் செட்ல. And then I came to LA, and the moment I reached, the moment when someone asked me where I'm from, and the moment I say I'm from Chennai, no one knew. And then I say Tamil Nadu, no one knew. And then I say India, and this is what happens. The India to your left is pretty much a representation of what India is in the US. No, with all due respect to every single citizen in India, நான் யாருக்கும் அகேன்ஸ்ட் கிடையாது, எனக்கு யாரும் எதிரிங்கெல்லாம் நான் சொல்ல. all Indians are brothers and sisters. But the moment I say India, what I hear back is, oh, namaste. Oh, are you from Delhi or Mumbai? Hey, I love Bollywood. Hey, lungi dance. Hey, chicken tikka masala. Uh, so I mean, I was like, listen, India is not just that. India is way beyond what you exactly have inside your head. So from that instance, rather than pointing fingers at people, pointing or blaming others for not informing an international society about what India actually is, I thought, why not take things into my hand and see what I can do and how I can contribute to this kind of a situation. So that's one aspect of it. And then comes SCI-Arc. SCI-Arc played a really, really, really important role in who I am as an architect and how I perceive architecture and how I approach architecture. Um, what I want to personally share with you is a certain set of projects that I was exposed to. These are not the only projects, but these are the projects that influenced me as an architect and influenced me to do Tamil Futurism. I want to take a minute here and explain or give a brief explanation of what each project is. So the Walking City and the Plug-in City is a project proposed by this group of architects called Archigram in Italy in the year 1960s, and they formed this this Archigram group to create a new reality that was solely expressed through hypothetical projects. They came up with insane, unconventional ideas like a walking city, where it looks like a submarine with tentacles that's attached to it. It's a massive structure. It's an internal ecosystem of itself. It just goes around. It doesn't stay in one place. And then comes plug-in city, where the city grows, the city evolves. It's not contained. So as the population grows, as the requirement of what the people expands, the city expands with them. And then this is a project by Lebesgue called Underground Berlin, where it was his vision of what Berlin could possibly be. It's kind of a futuristic project. And then comes Continuous Monument in the center, which was proposed by a studio called Super Studio. Oh, my bad. I made a mistake. Archigram is UK. Super Studio is Italy. Super Studio, and it was simultaneously happening in Italy and UK in the 1960s, where they proposed this huge monument that spans across the entire world to create an order. And then this work is called Chamber Works. It's an artwork by Daniel Lipskin, which was sketched in the year 1983, where he tries to explore the relationship between music and architecture. And as you can see, these lines were evolved, and these lines were reflected in his projects that he was trying to develop in the future. Just to give you a reference, this artwork was done in 1983, and Daniel Lipskin's first project was built in the year 2000. So it's almost 18 years after this specific artwork. And then comes Grand Bibliothèque. This was a library proposal by OMA, where they were trying to use these masses and made those masses as voids, and those voids were translated into public spaces within that entire building. And then the last three are my most favorite. The one to the left is Arnoldi Triplex. To your surprise, this was designed by Frank Gehry, the old Gehry, before he got into this fluidic architecture. What he was trying to do there was take regular elements like windows or chimneys or staircase, and he basically exaggerated it and used those elements as the corner. So if you can see here, let me see if I can zoom in. Yeah, I can zoom in. இது வந்து ஒரு பேசிக்கான ஒரு விண்டோ ஆப்ஜெக்ட் that is being exaggerated beyond its practical scale and used that to deal with corners. Similarly here, it's basically a day-to-day chimney that the people use in the residences that is being exaggerated. And if you can see here, it's basically a staircase that's being exaggerated beyond its usual scale and used to deal with corners. And then comes The Cathedral by John Haydock. John Haydock is an architect who tries to use simple geometric forms to create space. And this was a proposal of his cathedral. And then comes Oblique Function by Claude Parent. So oblique function, rather than having a 90-degree wall in all your projects, what if everything becomes diagonal, so that also becomes an occupiable space? And this specific idea revolutionized the realm of architecture in the 1960s or 1970s. And this played a really important role in what I envisioned as something called a diagonal city in Tamizh Futurism. And then the idea of futurism. I was exposed at some point of time in my SCI-Arc career about this concept called futurism. Futurism is a term coined by Filippo Marinetti uh, in 1909 in Italy to celebrate change, originality, and innovation in culture and society. And there are so many futurism since that moment. There is Italian futurism, there's African futurism, there's Gulf futurism, Sino-futurism, eco-futurism. So basically what futurism tries to do, or these futurism try to do, is take one specific aspect, combine that or fuse that with the current world technology and push it to the future and see what are the possibilities, or what could be the possibilities of our future. It's more like envisioning a possible future. So ecofuturism puts nature in its forefront. It's more like fusing nature and technology and see what we can come up with. Xenofuturism is a futurism idea developed by the Chinese to break the cultural cliches the Chinese people are going through in the futuristic society. Gulf futurism is on the other end, tries to make a statement on what's exactly happening in Gulf, starting from inequality with construction workers and things like that. And then Afrofuturism tries to look into the world of Afro-Americans. அவங்க ஒரு பாயிண்ட்ல வந்துட்டு ஸ்லேவரி அனுபவிச்சாங்க அண்ட் ஈக்குவாலிட்டி வாஸ் நாட் தேர் இன் சொசைட்டி. ஸோ இந்த மாதிரி இல்லாம அவங்களுக்கு ஈக்குவலா எல்லாருக்கும் கொடுத்த மாதிரியான ஒரு ஈக்குவலான ரைட்ஸ் ஆப்ரோ அமெரிக்கன்ஸ்க்கும் கொடுத்துருந்தா எந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு சொசைட்டி வந்து அவங்க என்விஷன் பண்ணியிருப்பாங்க அப்படிங்கிறதுனுடைய ஒரு விஷயம் தான் வந்து ஆஃப்ரோஃபியூச்சரிசம். One thing that's common in all these futurism is using their culture, using their history, or using their idea. They're trying to make a statement. And what was my most favorite futurism was Afrofuturism for so many reasons. Because I was able to relate to the kind of societal issues that people were going through in the African and Afro-American community. So Afrofuturism, if we take a little deeper look in it, this is a body of collection of artists, architects, musicians, production designers, and product designers who worked in the realm of Afrofuturism. Starting from the left, it's a utopian model by Bodice Sekingeles, who's a designer and an artist. And then there were so many visual artwork that was produced during that time. Afrofuturism movement took over almost every single corner of the society. You take media, they would be there. You take art, they would be there. You take movies, they would be there. You take architecture, they would be there. Literally almost everything. So there were so many visual artists who came up with a futuristic vision of what African communities would be if they had not gone through any of the slavery that they went through. And this movement was started in the year 1993, and then it got its due in 2018, almost 25 years later, when Black Panther put Afrofuturism on a global scale. Hollywood took over, though there were so many criticisms on how African community is being represented in the movie. The point that we need to take into consideration is the idea of Afrofuturism is out there in a global scale. Then, so how did that influence this? Whatever I've been saying so long might sound too random, might look like dots all over the place, but then Tamil Futurism is a pivotal point that tries to connect all the points that I've been talking about the past few minutes. It's a pivotal point where my journey from Chennai to LA, my exposure and experience at SCI-Arc, the idea of futurism, the way I was influenced by Afrofuturism, all came together. And then before I get into Tamil Futurism, I wanted to mention this idea called it's Triple O. Triple O is object-oriented ontology. It's a contemporary philosophy proposed by the philosopher Graham Harman. To put it in simple words, Triple O-ன்றது என்னன்னா, we as humans நம்ம என்ன பார்த்தாலும் வந்து ஒரு ஹியூமன் பெர்ஸ்பெக்டிவ்லயும் ஒரு ஹியூமனை வந்து the hierarchy in the top point we always look into things. But what object-oriented ontology tries to propose is just strip off all the hierarchies that you associate with any objects. There's no it's all flat. Nano in the door onnudan, nano in the pen onnudan, nano in the mouse onnudan. So there's no hierarchy between anything that you can find around. Everything is equal. அந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு பெர்ஸ்பெக்டிவ்ல இருந்து வேர்ல்ட பார்த்தோம்னா என்ன மாதிரி இம்ப்ளிகேஷன்ஸ் அது நடக்கும் அப்படிங்கிறதுனுடைய ஒரு 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 ப்ரொபோசல் தான் வந்து ட்ரிபிள் ஓ. How did triple O affect? You'll see in the upcoming slides. And then, so futurism on one end is an extremely strong force, and Tamil on the other end is an extremely strong force. So when I started thinking about Tamil futurism, these are two strong forces that's going to collide with each other. How are the repercussions going to be? So what kind of result am I looking for? Is Tamil going to take over futurism and influence its ideas on the idea of futurism, or futurism is going to take over Tamil and completely transform what Tamil is? And then I didn't like both of those extremes. So I tried to come up with a better solution, somewhere in between, where futurism and Tamil equally share something and form a cognitive zone. So what is Tamil futurism? It's simple. 13th century வரைக்கும் ஆர்கிடெக்சர்னுடைய involvement in the Tamil culture was extreme. அதனுடைய எபிடோம் தான் வந்து தஞ்சை பெரிய கோயிலுடைய கன்ஸ்ட்ரக்ஷன். But 13th century அப்புறமா there were so many cultural influences, there were so many innovations that had happened that kind of, I wouldn't say took a toll, but it greatly influenced the way we people approached architecture. And இன்னைக்கு நம்ம போயிட்டு we say that we are one of the oldest civilizations in the human civilization. We are 2000 or 3000 years old, and 1500 வருஷத்துக்கு முன்னாடியே வந்து தஞ்சை பெரிய கோவில் மாதிரியான ஒரு மாவலை வந்து நம்ம ஆன்சிஸ்டர்ஸ் வந்து கட்டிட்டாங்க அப்படின்ற பெருமை. யா அக்ரி. பட் 1500 வருஷத்துக்கு முன்னாடியே அவங்க அதை பண்ணதுக்கு அப்புறம் what is it we've done beyond that? They created an amazing platform for every one of us. But what have we done using that platform? அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு question, and all the other influences that I was talking to you about before created a portal, I would say, to get into this world of Tamil futurism. So Tamil futurism என்றது என்னன்னா, இந்த 13th centuryக்கு அப்புறமா நடந்த இன்ஃப்ளூயன்ஸஸோ இன்வேஷன்ஸோ நடக்காம இப்பவும் 13th centuryல இருக்க மாதிரி ஆன டிசைன்ஸ் வந்து கண்டினியூ பண்ணியிருந்தாங்கன்னா what could be a possible future is what Tamil through an architectural lens is what Tamil futurism is trying to propose. And I want to be very clear about one thing, like I mentioned before, there's no one right answer to this idea of Tamil futurism. It's a global movement, it's a global vision where I'm trying to envision a future based on my understanding of what Tamil is, based on my understanding of what the overall global civilization is, and how I can contribute to that specific vacuum that I found in the Western civilization. So to get a little deeper into it, how, like I mentioned before, how object-oriented ontology influences. In the collection, the Jagannath that you see here is basically தேர். நம்ம ஊர்ல தேர் திருவிழா இருக்கு இல்லையா, அந்த தேர் திருவிழானுடைய இன்னொரு இன்டர்பிரிட்டேஷன் தான் வந்து இந்த big piece of Jagannath. And what it carries in it is the past, the present, and the possible future of architecture, Tamil architecture. That's what it's trying to convey. And the objects that populate this entire theater are almost similar objects, but they exist in different scales. So it's more to blur the idea of scalelessness, the idea of scale. நீங்க வந்து ரெண்டு ஆப்ஜெக்ட் ஒரே ஆப்ஜெக்ட் ரெண்டு ஸ்கேல்ல இருக்கும், or more than two scales இருக்கும். You wouldn't know which one is the right scale and which one is not. So you're trying to deal with some mysterious object which does not have scale to it. It can be as small as a doorknob, or it can be as big as a building, or it can be as big as a city. You exactly don't know what you're dealing with. Say, for example, I have some pieces here with me. I hope you all can see. So this piece here and this piece here, you can see it's the same, but it exists in two different scales. You don't know whether this is the right scale or this is the right scale, or something bigger than this is existing outside. You don't exactly know. That idea of scalelessness is something that I was trying to incorporate in the idea of Tamil Futurism, which is adopted from object-oriented ontology. And then series of objects were designed and developed. And what I tried to do here was Tamil architecture under the Miri. I was exposed to a certain Tamil grammar, like doublets in the reticulary, and initial like basically
Yeah, it's
something.
over.
What? Okay. Anyway, so Tamil grammarல இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு சில எலிமெண்ட்ஸ்லாம் எடுத்து what if I try to give a formal character to it based on the idea of Tamil futurism, some of these examples here. And so what I did was, in order to develop Tamil futurism, I gave myself a set of rules or principles. So these principles are basically a derivative of the existing principles that you can find in temple architecture. But I did not follow everything exactly. I looked into it and I took whatever I could, but I did not use it exactly. I tweaked it. And in certain cases, I went against, say, for example, the idea of symmetry in a temple. Now, I went against it, or like I kind of tweaked it, which I would like to call as near symmetry. So some of these objects, if you can see, பார்க்க வந்து symmetrical இருக்கும், but when you take a deeper look into it, you can clearly see that these two objects are not symmetrical at all. And then punched openings. What I was trying to do there is sculptures இருக்கும் இல்லையா, ஒரு narrative explain பண்றதுக்காக temples. So I ripped off all the sculptures, but then I gave a figurative quality to it. And these would also be translated as punched openings, where you can use it as a window or a doorway. And then one of the most important aspects of Tamil futurism is the way it's dealing with the ground. Rather than give, like I mentioned before, this is again where triple O comes into play. ஒரு பில்டிங் வந்து பில்டிங் ஃபுல்லாவே ஒரு ஆர்கிடெக்சரா டிசைன் பண்ணிட்டு, rather than just putting it on the ground, what kind of relationship the ground would start to have with the building? Or what if we approach ground as an architectural element rather than just a regular surface? What kind of tension these two would create with each other, to come to a compromise? அந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு ஜோன்ல இருக்கிறதுக்கு என்ன மாதிரி நடக்கும் அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு ஐடியா ப்ரொபோஸ் பண்றதுதான் வந்து ஐடியா ஆஃப் கிரவுண்ட் பிரின்சிபிள், one of the principles of Tamil futurism. So here you can, the figure ground diagram can clearly show the difference between the architecture and the figural quality that I mentioned before through the punched openings. And then this is more of a deeper look into my work process, more like a sneak peek into my head. So on the தேர் design பண்ணிருக்கும் போது, there were so many directions that I was able to take this project towards, but it's still in the development process right now. So இந்த தேர் வந்து வெளியில ஒரு ஆப்ஜெக்ட்ஸ் வந்து ஒரு நேரட்டிவா கொண்டு வரதுக்கு பதிலா, what if it carries a city on the inside with it? How would that be? More like a moving city, like a walking city proposed a archigram, which I mentioned before. These were like various iterations of what a city could possibly be inside this huge juggernaut. And again, here, from the looks of it, this might look like an object with no reference to scale, but the moment you start putting buildings inside it, you don't exactly know what you're dealing with. It's so massive that it could contain an entire city inside it. And then these are a sneak peek into my workspace, Rhino workspace. I try to have a collection of objects in my Rhino workspace to play with it, to mess with it. It's pretty much a process of playing. That's how I approach it. For example, so I'm working on a project right now. I can't disclose what the project is, but what I've been trying to do is like 3D print models. I'm not good at sketching, so I go into digital world and I try to digitally sketch, and I try to 3D print and play with it and see how these parts come away from each other, and what kind of information that these 3D models give me that I can translate back into the project. It's play pretty much. And then Tamil Futurism 2.0. So that happened September 2019 as a part of my thesis. So what next? Tamil Futurism 2.0 is the next step towards pushing Tamil Futurism beyond the spectacle of architecture. Um, I started with my own logo, uh, and I'm personally interested in the idea of um, symbols. I really love symbols. So எனக்கு ஒரு symbol நான் create பண்ணணும் அப்படின்னு யோசிக்கும் போது I had a couple of ideas in my head, and what I narrowed down to was this. This symbol is nothing but my name in ancient Tamil scripture. So this is where it started. It's Adhavan in அது எப்படி வந்து ஒரு abstract model வந்து it became the specific symbol. And then the patterns you see is basically the pattern you can find this tribe community called Toda tribes. So that kind of a pattern was incorporated into it. And then the next step would be what I'm working on right now is the idea of a museum of a future. So நம்மளோட ancient products இருக்கு இல்லையா, say for example here you can see அருவாமனை. அந்த அருவாமனை வந்து தமிழ் ஃபியூச்சரிசம் பிரின்சிபல் அடாப்ட் பண்ணி டிசைன் பண்ணா எந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு ப்ராடக்ட் இது இவால்வ் ஆயிருக்கும் அப்படிங்கிறது ஒரு பாசிபிலிட்டி தான் இது. And then this got transformed into this where you can just close that blade or the knife part, and then this object that you see here, which again is mysterious, you don't know what you're dealing with, is basically a transformation, or this object was something that was transformed from this part here. So again, the idea of blurring the scale, and the idea of triple O, where there's no hierarchy. You can't. It's literally an architectural object that was developed from the idea of an arvamane. So there's no hierarchy between the arvamane or the architecture. It's all the same. Then right now, what I'm working on is this is a part of my world building. The idea of Lemuria continent, the idea of குமரி காண்டம் அப்படின்றது இருக்கு இல்லையா, ரொம்ப நாளா வந்து அதுக்கு வந்து லிட்ரரி ப்ரூஃப்ஸ் மட்டும்தான் இருந்தது. But recently I had a conversation with this Tamil researcher called Orisa Balu. You can look him up. He formed a group of his own people, fishermen, and he went down to the sea, and he collected physical evidences and proofs that a continent existed where the continent of Lemuria was proposed. அந்த இடத்துல வந்து இந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு சிவிலைசேஷன் இருந்திருக்கு அப்படிங்கிறதுக்கு ஒரு physical proofs வந்து he found. So this is a work in progress of my vision of what they call கடல் கொண்ட தென்னாடு or குமரி காண்டம், a southern land consumed by the sea, based on the 5 landscapes of ancient Tamils: குறிஞ்சி, முல்லை, மருதம், நெய்தல், பாலை, காடும் காடு சார்ந்த பகுதியும், மலையும் மலை சார்ந்த பகுதியும், வயலும் வயல் சார்ந்த பகுதியும், and then the other 2, deserts and seashores. ஸோ அந்த 5 லேண்ட்ஸ்கேப்பை பேஸ் பண்ணி இன்னைக்கு அந்த சிவிலைசேஷன் எக்ஸிஸ்ட் ஆயிருந்தா எந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு லைஃப் ஸ்டைல் அவங்க வாழ்ந்திருப்பாங்க, எந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு ஆர்கிடெக்சரல் ஸ்டைல் அவங்களுக்கு இருந்திருக்கும், எந்த மாதிரியான ப்ராடக்ட்ஸ் they would have used, what kind of a fashion they would be having. And it's much beyond architecture. Fashion comes into play, media comes into play, the idea of world building comes into play. And I've also been having conversations with so many Afrofuturists right now, and also Tamil researchers right now to make this vision a global movement. What interests me personally is, there are so many conventional limitations and set of rules that we put to ourselves when we try to deal with architecture. For a second, what if we just lose all that rules? What if we just free ourselves from those conventional limits? Maybe a new kind of a thought process would evolve in the world of architecture is what I'm trying to explore. And to finish with, this is my definition of what architecture is to me at the moment. This might change, this might evolve, and it's totally okay. It's unfair for architects to have one single vision for the rest of their life. Artists have this freedom where they have different phases in their life, where they have different styles, they have different kinds of exploration in their industry. But architects வந்துட்டு அவங்களுக்கு ஒரு ஸ்டைல் ஃபாலோ பண்றாங்கன்னா அதுதான் அவங்களுடைய சிக்னேச்சர் ஸ்டைல். நம்ம சொல்றது எந்த அளவுக்கு நியாயம். So architecture to me is a medium that can communicate, narrate a story, and with simple gestures can even make a political statement. It's a medium that is bringing into physical form the concepts and desires through its potential to synthesize culture, politics, economical forces, and simultaneously provoke or challenges, and sometimes even force us to rethink our own position with space, time, and everyday reality. Thank you. And I think that's all I have. So if we have any questions right now, we can
Okay,
get to that.
guys, if someone has a question, please use your hand raising thing so that I can unmute you and you can actually have a conversation with them. But at first, I have a question from on behalf of Seed. And
Okay.
how was the transition from engineering to architecture, and how did it reflect on Tamil Futurism?
It's a really good question, you know. இது வந்து எனக்கு ஒரு பூனா பேனான்னு எனக்கு தெரியல. But I did my undergrad in engineering. So like I said, when I started my master's in architecture at SCI-Arc, SCI-Arc is a very unique school, you know, and we at SCI-Arc don't call it a school of architecture. We call it a school of architectural thinking. And the first lesson that I was taught, or because now the Chennai and the very conventional outlook towards architecture and you know, like I mentioned, like conventional set of rules, இது பண்ணலாமா இது பண்ணக்கூடாது அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு ப்ரீகன்சீவ் நோஷனோட தான் இருந்தேன். But I didn't have my undergrad in architecture, so I didn't have to empty my cup before I started my master's, fortunately. So it was a fresh mind, and then I moved there. The approach that they had towards architecture was completely different from what I had in my mind. It did take some time for me to get comfortable with it, but I think like I mentioned before, அது எப்படி எனக்கு as an engineer, I don't think it influenced me, but I think it was more of a reflection of what my childhood was, what I was exposed to, you know, that was translated into what I'm doing right now. But yeah, engineering director didn't play a role, but the people that I was exposed to in engineering did play a really important role. And to be honest, though I studied civil engineering, my passion was always in architecture realm. So I was trying to do something or the other related to architecture. I think it was my third year of undergrad when the firm, the Dot Architecture and Design Studios, was started. It was two architects who graduated from SAP and myself. Though I did not have a proper training in architecture, I was more into visualization. So I took care of the visualization team of Dot Architecture. I used to do renders. I used to do visualization for other offices, you know, outsourcing and things. Sometimes I would get really shitty projects. இவங்களுக்குலாம் நான் ரெண்டர் பண்றதுக்கு நானே ஒரு ப்ராஜெக்ட் டிசைன் பண்ணிடலாம் போல இருக்கு அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரிலாம் கூட தோணும். பட் but I think all this led to SCI-Arc, and Tamil Futurism is something that was completely developed because of the influence that I had at SCI-Arc. And I think this one thing would make more sense. Now, US on the Pope, what I noticed was people who come from a cultural background, when they move to US, either they try to change themselves or adapt themselves to the Western civilization, or அவங்களால அந்த ஒரு கல்ச்சரை வந்து அடாப்ட் பண்ண முடியாம they go back. You know, but there's a very beautiful space in between these two, where you know you can bring in your culture, and there's a civilization out there which tries to push you, which tries to facilitate you with so many things. And when these two come together, I think that's where you create a niche for yourself, and that's what I try to do. You know, in thesis presentation முடிஞ்சப்போ, not even one single comment was bad, or they did not have any kind of a negative criticism towards it, you know. And ஃபர்ஸ்ட் நான் இந்த ஒரு ஐடியா ப்ரப்போஸ் பண்ணும்போதும் வந்து யாரும் நான் அப்போஸ் பண்ணல, இல்ல நீ வந்து ஒரு இன்டர்நேஷனல் திங் இது கல்ச்சர் எடுத்துட்டு வரக்கூடாது அந்த மாதிரிலாம் சொல்லுவேன். இன்ஃபேக்ட் தேவர் மோர் வெல்கம். அண்ட் மை தீசிஸ் அட்வைசர் வாஸ் ஒன் டு புஷ் மீ ஃபர்தர். ஹி வாஸ் லைக், ஜஸ்ட் பில்ட் அ ஜகர்நாட் ஹியர். நீ ஒரு தேர் திருவிழா புல் பண்றீன்னா எடுத்துருவா, புல் பண்ணு, it would be an experience for us அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு ஒரு limitations or restrictions இல்லாம they will like do whatever you want அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு freedom இருக்கு. I think that's what made me do Tamil Futurism. Is what I think.
Okay, awesome. Anyone else who has a question, you can also put down on the chat box if you don't want to unmute yourself, or you can raise your hand.
Yeah, I prefer raising hands. யார் கேக்குறாங்களோ அவங்கள பார்த்து நான் பதில் சொன்னா வந்து I feel more connected. It's just a humble request from my end. But I mean, if you want to put it in chat, that's also
Yeah.
doable. I
We
see
have,
Jacob there. Hi, Jacob.
Okay. So, admin, can you ask the question? Hi. Yeah. You can go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Go ahead.
Yeah. My question is, like your project in general, how is it different from the traditional architecture? Like I don't know much details about your project, but from the looks of it, it looks more like it is bending more towards the temple architecture of Tamil Nadu. So, like when we think of traditional architecture, like we think of huts or earth architecture or mud in general. So, how is your project? Is it similar or like I'm not saying to compare your project with the traditional architecture, but like I would just like a comment of your project in respect to traditional.
Let me see if I understand your question right. So, did you ask me how is it different from traditional architecture, or
Yeah, like different, or is it similar or?
okay? So okay. I think this might answer your question. I'll tell you why I chose temples. It's not like I'm trying to give importance to just one religion or anything of the sort. Nothing like that. When you say Tamil, the closest thing that I could relate to architecturally is the temples that we have in existence right now. I was trying to research as much as I could, into the past. Like I was, but fortunately or unfortunately, they were like I would believe in certain history that I'm reading, and then on the contrary, where over a theory, when it would be debunking the theory that I'm reading so far. So rather than focusing on the past, I thought I know the present is true, and using that, I could project it to the future and see what I can do. I don't know about the past because it was very uncertain. I don't know what is right and what is wrong, and like I mentioned before in my principles of Tamil Futurism, yes, it does have a glimpse of uh, the architecture that you can find in the past because it is a very intentional move so that you can relate to what you're looking at. But um, in no way, I think it's a very tensional relationship between the past and the present or the future. You have certain glimpses, but it's not exactly what you've seen before. It always exists in this mysterious zone. And one classic example would be this object. This is basically the temple tower of Sanjay Periyakol. Okay, and the object that you see here was evolved from just this one object. Do you think these two are same? No. Do you think these two are different? No, because it's there is a relationship between these two in when it comes to similarities, because this is a byproduct of this. So it is in a way, yes, it is in a way, no. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
cool.
So, anyone else can raise their hand. Mm, okay, we have. Okay, Jayakar, you can ask your question.
So,
Hi,
hello,
Jacob.
Adhavan.
Hi, Jacob.
So, I have a small doubt. Like, when you started doing this Tamil futurism stuff,
Yeah.
like, how do you find the response among the Tamil people? And as well as, did you find anybody who wanted to, who was doing this genre of architecture where they wanted to develop or introduce futurism, thinking in the genre of Tamil oriented, in the genre of Tamil futurism? Like, did you find anybody, or like, did anybody come and contact you by saying that, I'm really interested in it and I also want to develop a new genre of Tamil futurism? And how was the response with regards to the architectural fraternity?
Rather than putting it as an architecture fraternity, I would use the word designer fraternity, because I personally work at the intersection of art and architecture. I cannot legally call myself as an architect because I'm not licensed. But how I call myself, or what my position is architectural designer. So I use architecture as a medium to design or express what I have in my head. Um, so rather than putting it as an architecture fraternity, I would like to say designer fraternity. And I've been getting pretty good receptions, man. Uh, I had an opportunity to feature my work in Canada's largest festival for art, which gives importance to culture. And I think among 100, 150 applicants, they chose 10, and Tamil Futurism was a part of it. And there I got an opportunity to meet so many designers in that realm of futures, who's working towards futures. So it's more about crossbreeding or cross-disciplinary or multidisciplinary, multicultural aspect. How I can adopt or adapt something from an existing culture, or a different culture, and bring that into mine, and how is that going to influence me? But at the same time, I'm not going to take something and put it right there. That's where the role of a creative designer come into play, where you try to own what you get inspired from. Otherwise, it would be more like a copy. But yeah, I met with so many futurists, and I'm right now working with a couple of artists and designers in Canada, and I'm having a show coming up in India. It was supposed to happen next month, but unfortunately, due to COVID, that got pushed further. And I've been talking to so many Afrofuturists specifically, because I was able to see so many relatable situations between the African community and Tamil community in an overall aspect. And I was also it's not just about the idea of design, because history is coming into play. Though we are not using history as a tool, we are trying to uh, use it as a medium to understand what we are dealing with. So I've been talking to researchers to understand more. To give you an example, I was talking to the Tamil researcher, where he was trying to explain me the lifestyle of Tamil people in the ancient times. That kind of informed the houses that they were living inside. எதுக்காக திண்ணை கட்டியிருக்காங்க, எதுக்காக வீட்டுக்கு பின்னாடி குளம் வச்சிருக்காங்க அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. So like list goes on. I don't want to expand further, but as far as the reception is concerned, it was amazing. And I'm specifically not focusing only on the realm of architecture. I would like to use the realm of design, because it's more broad, and it can bring in more people to make this movement a global movement. And I just want to add one more thing, since I've been talking about this. This might not have anything to do with Jacob's question, but one of the biggest reasons why I'm pushing Tamil Futurism as a movement is because of one reason. Uh, if you take history, every society would have been associated with a specific architectural movement, and an art movement. And an art movement would have played a really important role in shaping the society in that specific time period in history. You take modernism, you take postmodernism, you take Renaissance, you take Baroque, any art movement for that matter. But in spite of us being a civilization that's 2,000 or more than that years old, what kind of an art movement do we own? That's the kind of question I was trying to answer. And I personally believe and feel Tamil Futurism has this potential, to be owned by us. And how is this going to influence our society in so many levels and so many platforms is what I'm trying to discover. So it's not just architecture; it's much more beyond that. Yeah. Awesome.
Okay, we have another question on behalf of Seed. I see that you
Yeah.
have believed in the sentence "Sirutuli Peruvellam," which
Yeah.
means even a small drop can bring a huge flood. Could you elaborate
Yeah.
this sentence in terms of how Tamil futurism could bring in such a huge change?
Hey, I think you guys have done a good research, man. That's a really good question. Um, yeah, I still believe in Sirutuli Peruvellam. It's more like, taking baby steps, and you need to start somewhere, rather than us thinking about, okay, who's going to do this, who's going to do that, when am I going to make this big, everyone would have started somewhere. Any big personality or any big movement or anything for that matter. There's always a starting point, and the starting point would always be small. And um, last year, this time, I don't think Tamil Futurism. No one had any clue about Tamil Futurism, including me. 2019 May. I think that's when my thesis started. I had no clue about what Tamil Futurism is. But today, there is an identity of what Tamil Futurism is. This journey for the last 1 year to me is Sirutuli. Perivellam is something that's gonna happen in the upcoming years. Baby steps towards something big, and it's more like I'm trying to envision something and create a portal or create a language, create a vocabulary, and people might disapprove whatever I said. It's okay. I completely agree to disagree. People can say I don't make sense, but on the contrary, uh, they might believe in the idea of Tamil futurism. They might not like the idea of how I'm approaching Tamil futurism, but they might like the idea of Tamil futurism. So adopt that and then try to push that in the way you want it to be. If someone is interested in sustainability, maybe they can take the idea of the past or the idea of traditional Tamil architecture and push that in their own sense. I think that's where the Perivellam part comes in. What I'm doing right now is taking baby steps, and I'm trying to show the world, show the people that there is something called Tamil futurism that exists, and there is a potential of it becoming a global movement. Try to own it and try to use that platform to push as much as you can. Yeah,
Okay.
Sirutuli Perivellam. Perivellam is upcoming. I'm looking forward to Perivellam.
Yeah. Does anyone else have a question? You can raise your hand. Mm,
Okay.
you can put your questions in your chat box too. Okay, we have one more question from C. So we actually want to know about your creative process on how you start and how you end. What's your point of inspiration and everything?
Okay, cool. That's a good question. Um, what I try to do is take any of my design. Now, first I try to understand the context, what's exactly happening அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு, and then I try to uh, give a certain set of verbs or words that could describe what I'm trying to do, and I try to give a formal aesthetic to those words. For example, like I showed you before. Let me see. Okay. Yeah, I think these are good. So I'm right now working on a competition. I can't disclose what competition it is, but it's a tower project. And what I was trying to do was take the idea of a spire, because spire plays a really important role in the history of that specific site. But then how can I, recreate or re-envision the idea of a spire, how people approach spire. Spire usually is approached as an aesthetic object that gets attached to an existing architecture. But what if the spire itself become an occupiable space, a volume? So that's where it started. I hope you can see this. And then I just did some multiple iterations of what a spire could be, playing with the volume, playing with the silhouette of the spire, and then I landed with something like this, which kind of uh, resonates the characteristic of a spire, but it's not exactly a spire. You don't know what you're dealing with. And then the next part was it's an observation tower, so it has to be a 360-degree process. So when the idea of 360-degree comes into play, that's when a sloping ramp that wraps around the building plays a really important role as a circulation object. So the next step was, what if I exaggerate that idea of a circulation object outside of the spire? Just take that circulation ramp and pull it out and see what kind of a tension it tries to create between these two. So I came up with something like this, where the 360 degrees kind of uh, wrapping around the existing spire. So you have the characteristic of a spire where it talks about history of that site, but at the same time, I'm trying to push it further and trying to give a new kind of identity to that specific idea of a spire, and see where I can bring in the historical context, but at the same time trying to have something new that people have not encountered before. Um, it's pretty much a play. I love 3D prints. I 3D print a lot. I have collection of 3D prints here. I love to play with menagerie of objects. 3D print, 3D print, 3D print. Because like I mentioned before, I'm not good at sketching, so I 3D print a lot and try to play with those as merely um, objects, and then see how that translates back into my uh, project as an architecture. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, bro. I have a question for you.
Yes, bro.
So, temple architecture in India is developed in almost all the religions during the ancient India. We also have other forms of architectures, maybe Mughal architecture, Indo-Sasanic
Yeah.
architecture, Dravidian architecture, as such. But what are
Yeah.
those important aspects where your research and vision of Tamil futurism can really stand out? Maybe a tribute when compared to all other forms.
Yeah, I agree. I have a reason for not even using the term Dravidian into my project. Not like I'm against Dravidianism or anything of that sort, but the moment I bring in the word Dravidian, it can easily be shifted into a political statement, which I want my project to be away from, at least for some time. I could have easily called this Dravidian futurism, but I didn't want to, because people believe that Tamil civilization is supposed to be one of the oldest civilizations. So Tamil is beyond religion, Tamil is beyond caste, Tamil is beyond community. Um, and that's the main reason why I use the word Tamil futurism. And right now, what I'm working on is the precedents that I chose were only till the 13th century. Whatever architecture was existing until 13th century AD, that's what I was using. And the reason I used temples is mainly because when you say Tamil architecture, that's the closest you could relate to. And I believe that uh, uh, temples were not. Sorry about that. Temples were not believed to be religious institutions, but more of a community center where the city comes together and have idea of communities being developed in those zones. I think only at certain point of time in history, when rulers come into play, when the kings come into play, they use religion as a tool to maintain an order, and they try to transform these temples into religious institutions. So um, the next step right now, what I'm right now working on, is including architecture that happened post 13th century. Like you mentioned, there was Mughal influences. There were so many cultural influences that did play a really important role in how architecture is being conceived in Tamil Nadu and India in general. So, what kind of a futuristic vision that could be is what I'm working on right now.
Yeah, cool.
Bro,
Yeah. Yes, bro.
yeah, bro. Today I just went into your Instagram and I just
So your
saw
voice is
everything.
breaking. So
So now you can hear me?
yeah, frame mode, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bro, I just saw
Hi,
a
bro.
post in your Instagram. So that was something related to museum for Keeladi.
Yeah.
So in that you have mentioned that we have found physical evidences where Tamil is the oldest and oldest civilization in this world. So could you tell us or share some story behind this Keeladi and how you have approached the museum design?
Okay. Kiridi வந்து எனக்கு Kiridi, I think that's when Kiridi அந்த artifactsலாம் வந்து discover பண்ண time. It's a really important time in history where you start to get physical evidences which tries to prove that there was a civilization happening in the down south during Harappa and Mohenjo-daro time period. It's not been explored further, but the one thing that I really admired when I moved to the US is how they uh, try to secure and safeguard the history that they have, the artifacts that they procure, and the museums play a really important role in the society. Um, I would also say museum tries, kind of ties the society together into one whole. But அந்த லிமிட்டெட் ஹிஸ்டரி இருக்கக்கூடிய இவங்களே அவங்களுடைய ஹிஸ்டரி வந்து இவ்வளோ பாதுகாப்பா வைக்கிறாங்கன்னா இவ்வளோ 1000 வருஷமா இருக்க நாம ஏன் அதை பண்ணல அப்படிங்கிறது முதல் கேள்வி. ரெண்டாவது கேள்வி, அன்னைக்கும் நான் யாரோடய பேசிட்டு இருந்தேன். I forgot the name of the person, but he's also a researcher and archaeologist. He was saying the condition of those artifacts that were found the Kiridi discovery pathetic-ஆ இருக்கு. அது ஒழுங்கா சேஃப்கார்ட் பண்ணல, அது ஒழுங்கா ப்ரொடெக்ட் பண்ணல. ஏதோ நம்ம வெளில போயிட்டு வந்தா பொருட்களை இங்கே அங்கேயே தூக்கி போடுவோம் இல்லையா, அந்த மாதிரி இருக்குன்ட்டு அவங்க சொன்னாங்க. நான் பர்சனலா பார்க்கல, பட் தட்ஸ் வாட் ஐ வாஸ் இன்ஃபார்ம். ஸோ இதெல்லாம் பார்க்கும்போது ஐ ஃபீல் லைக் we as a society have to appreciate our history more, appreciate art more, and அதனுடைய ஒரு என்னுடைய மூவ் ஆர் என்னுடைய ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட் ஆஃப் சேயிங் திஸ் இஸ் இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் வாஸ் மை ப்ரொபோசல் ஆஃப் மியூசியம் ஃபார் கியூரிட்டி. A museum that's specifically dedicated to the artifacts that were found in Kiridi, and it was just a quick process of putting things together. What kind of an image I had in my head, I put together. But right now, what I personally have in my head is the idea of a museum of the future. Museum always talks about the past, but what if museum talks about the future? Where you go into the museum, all you see is a speculative world which talks about civilization that exists 100 years from now, 200 years from now. What kind of lifestyle would they have? What kind of repercussions would the society be going through based on what's happening right now? So COVID-19 is a classic example. How is this going to be reflected back on how we perceive society in general, and how architecture plays a role in COVID-19 situation, in terms of a pandemic? So அந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு exploration, one of the example is what Museum for Curiosity is, what I think. And yeah, as far as Kumarikandam you mentioned, it's still a work in progress, man. I don't know if I can disclose any further information on that. I personally don't want to. It's still a work in progress. I would like to keep it low, but I'll soon be updating on that too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, and now we have one more question from the chat box. It's from my senior Calvin Anna. Hi, hello. I have seen your Tamil Futurism model. It's all very interesting. I would request you to explain your design thoughts by breaking down one of your small model and explain it from origin idea of history and then your final output. Thank you.
Okay, that's him putting me on a spot there. Okay, let me use this because it's easily relatable. Use this. So the objects that you see here in the ஒரு part இருக்குல்லையா, இந்த half மரம் இந்த ஒரு part இருக்குல்லையா, it's basically Meenakshi Ammanuடைய one of the towers. Okay? And then, like I was talking about the principles of Tamil Futurism, I took that object and then I was like, சரி அதை வச்சு இந்த ரூல்ஸை வந்து அந்த ஆப்ஜெக்ட்டுக்கு அப்ளை பண்ணா how would that object react to these rules? So the first part is it coming off its symmetry. It is like I mentioned before, I call it near symmetry. This might look symmetrical, but then if you take a closer look at it, it's not. And then the next part was slicing of these corners and getting rid of the sculptures. So by slicing, I get a figurative quality to this object. Light reflection is helping me here to emphasize that the specific part here, you know. And then so like I mentioned before, it does have a resonance of the past. You can clearly relate to it. You can say, hey, in the temple நான் இங்க பார்த்திருக்கேன் அப்படின்ற ஒரு relativity. But at the same time, this is not something you've seen before. And then this would be another classic example of the same. And this piece that you see on the top is again a part of the same tower, the Meenakshi Amman tower, but it's been evolved, or it's been transformed into something else. And then you see this object here, this ground object here. It's the same object that you see on the top that's been squished and played around to create a ground object where, this kind of creates a relationship with this, and what's exactly happening between these two, we don't know. And this still has the figural quality to it. Like, see, you see this reflection here, that's kind of a figure. You see a reflection here, that's a kind of a figure. If you see here, that's a kind of a figure, those are the kind of quality that I was trying to incorporate. If you ask me whether this is architecture, I would try to argue yes, but the right answer for this would be it's an architectural object which has the potential to transform into architecture. I hope that answered your question, Calvin. Thank you so much. It was a good question.
Okay, we have one more question. Is there a way to read your thesis theory in detail? Maybe it's black book.
Thesis theory. To be honest with you, I do not have a thesis theory because thesis at SCI-Arc is quite unconventional. I don't need to write a book, or I don't need to publish my work as a part of thesis. So what I presented for my thesis is just that one image I showed you. ஒரு பெரிய தேர் இருந்தது, அந்த தேர் மேல objects இருந்தது, ஒரு பெரிய கயிறு முன்னாடி கட்டிருந்தது. That's exactly it. And I did have a small book which had the definition of Tamizh Futurism, and it had some images of their Tanjavur Periya Koil so that people here could understand what I was talking about. First நான் தேர்ன்ற ஒரு கான்செப்ட் எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ணும்போது அவங்க நம்பவே இல்லை, இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு விஷயம் இருக்கா அப்படின்னு கேட்டாங்க. So I had to put pictures of there, and they were like awestruck by it. It's a mammoth of a pieceல கல்லுல செஞ்சது, கிட்டத்தட்ட ஒரு 50-100 பேர் சேர்ந்து இழுப்பாங்க. அவ்வளோ பெரிய ஒரு மேசிவான ஒரு ஆப்ஜெக்ட் வந்து ஊருக்குள்ள தெருக்குள்ள வந்து போயிட்டு இருக்கும் அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு ஐடியாவே வந்துட்டு it was very new to them. So what I did in that book was add images so that they can understand what I'm talking about, so that it's not going to be something completely new to them. But I don't think I have a thesis book. Maybe that's something that I need to work on. Who asked the question?
It's the admin. I don't know the name actually.
I don't know
Does
who the admin
anyone
is.
else have a question? Can raise their hand. Anyone?
Calvin is racing again.
Okay. Hi Anna, can you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, Calvin.
Hi, thanks for answering my question. It was a really nice breakdown of how your idea was. So I just want to know, did you spend a lot of time in making the model software? It would be a very complex kind of a thing, or was it very flawless to you?
Can you say that again? I didn't hear your question properly.
Yeah, the model itself looked very complex in making down into a symmetry, and then arranging the figurative from the ground to the top and all. So it's very complex to make the model in software. So did you struggle a lot in that part, or were you very flawless in that? What kind of software did you use?
I wouldn't say I struggled. It was a challenge for sure. I used Rhino. Predominantly I used Rhino, and sometimes just to have my creative juices going, I use Maya, but it's predominantly Rhino. What I usually do is what we call it is precedence. make digital models of presidents, whatever I want to work with. So I had 3D models modeled by myself of Thanjai Periya Koil, Madurai Meenakshi Amman Koil. I also have some தேர் ரெண்டு மூணு தேர் from different cities. So I had a set of archives with which I can work further. So I wouldn't say it's a complex process, because once you start modeling the existing temple, அதுலயும் உங்களுக்கு வந்து நிறைய information வந்துரும். All the complexities are இருக்கட்டும், the idea of offset stacking இருக்கட்டும் to form that tower. அதுவே அந்த president modelingலயே உங்களுக்கு most of the information would be developed in that stage. And then once you start transforming it, it's all about what kind of information you want to retain, what kind of information you want to lose, and what kind of additional information you want to add to that existing piece. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering. And
Yeah.
apart from this architectural point of view, how are you doing during this COVID situation? What is your pastime?
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for your concern. Yeah, I mean, it's been a little crazy. Um, I'm in LA right now, so California is one of the most affected states in the US. We've been asked to stay home. அட்லீஸ்ட் நாங்கள் வெளில க்ரோசரிஸ்லாம் வாங்க போனால் தடியடிலாம் இல்லை, அது வரைக்கும் சரி. You just have to wear a mask and go. There are certain protocols that you have to follow. But apart from that, it's been okay. I think it's been almost 8 weeks since we were asked to stay at home. So it looks like it's going to extend further this entire month. But I mean, trying to stay safe, sail through, use these opportunities to give talks like these, increase my tool set, getting to explore new softwares, trying to use the time. That's about it.
All right, thank you. Stay safe.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it. You too.
Okay.
Hey, I see a question here. Is it a
yeah, we have a question in the chat box from Surya. Hello, brother. Just wanted to know the best way to step into the field of architecture after procuring a degree in civil engineering. Like, what are the basic requirements, qualities to be possessed, and a better possible way to step into the field?
So, okay, so this is what happened to me. The course that I took in my master's is called M.Arch 1. இது வந்து மற்ற கண்ட்ரீஸ்ல இருக்கான்னு தெரியல, பட் யூஎஸ்ல மாத்திரம் இந்த ஒரு பாசிபிலிட்டி இருக்கு, வேர் இட்ஸ் அ 7-semester program, 6 semesters plus 1 thesis semester, and irrespective of your undergrad background, நீங்க என்ன வேணாலும் படிச்சிருக்கலாம். நீங்க டாக்டரா இருக்கலாம், எக்கனாமிக்ஸ் படிச்சிருக்கலாம், இல்ல சார்ட் அக்கௌண்டண்டா இருக்கலாம், இல்ல ஆர்ட் ஃபீல்டுக்கு சம்மந்தமே இல்லாம வேற ஏதாவது ஒரு ஃபீல்ட்ல கூட இருக்கலாம். பட் யூ ஆர் எலிஜிபிள் டு டேக் திஸ் ப்ரோக்ராம் அண்ட் study architecture. I think that was like a gateway to me get into architecture. To be honest, I was always interested in it. Due to various reasons, I had to choose civil engineering as my undergrad background, but somehow I tried to shift and transition. I should say a lot of things were informed to me because of the undergraduate degree that I had in civil engineering. It did help me a lot. Yeah, did that make sense? Can you repeat the question once again?
Yeah.
Or I don't know if I answered the question.
It's just he wants to know what are the kinds of skills and requirements that are need to be possessed once your that transition from civil engineering to architecture. He wants to know.
Okay, that's simple. M.Arch 1, you don't need anything. You just need a portfolio. For M.Arch 1, you just need a portfolio to show what you're interested in. உங்களுக்கு என்ன மாதிரியான ஒரு what kind of an expression you want to express, what kind of a style you have, and that's about it. It's all portfolio of your creative works put together. எனக்கு என்ன இருந்ததுன்னா, I did play an important role in Dot Architecture and Design Studios. I worked there for almost 3 years as a visualization head. So அந்த ப்ராஜெக்ட்ஸ்லாம் வந்துட்டு I put in my portfolio. And as far as skill set is concerned, you don't need much, especially for this program, because எல்லாருமே வேற வேற இண்டஸ்ட்ரி வேற வேற ஸ்ட்ரீம்ல இருந்து வருவாங்க. ஸோ இது everything was taught to us. Though I knew the basics of Photoshop, 3D Max, V-Ray rendering, Lumion, SCI-Arc போறதுக்கு முன்னாடியே எனக்கு தெரிஞ்சது. But none of these softwares I used SCI-Arc. Master's programmer, we predominantly use Rhino, we use Maya, we use something called Keyshot, and all of these softwares are taught. So as far as skill set is concerned, it's good to learn Rhino, and it's good to learn Revit just to keep it at the back of your archive. But as far as this specific program is concerned, you don't need much. You just need a tool to express what you have inside your head as a creator. It can be a sketch. For example, when it comes to production design, art set design பண்றவங்க, they don't need softwares. All they do is just sketch பண்ணி கொடுத்துருவாங்க, and the people would develop the set. அவ்வளவுதான். So all you need is a tool. It can be software, it can be sketching technique or something to communicate what you have inside your head to other people. It's softwares are nothing but communication tools to communicate the vision that you have inside your head to others. So அதுக்கு எந்த டூல் இருந்தாலும் it's going to work.
Okay, we have one last question. Is there a specific reason to paint the model gold? Which historical aspect were you trying to portray? Shraddha Kims. The question from Shraddha.
Oh, thank you, Shraddha, for the question. Yeah, gold. That question came to me a lot. Nothing but the idea of something being rich. The moment you say gold, you associate with richness, with something that's special, and we have a great history with the idea of gold and how we as a society perceive and praise the element of gold. அந்த ஒரு ப்ரெஷியஸ்னஸ் இருக்கு இல்லையா, அந்த ஒரு பிரிஸ்டீன், ஒரு ப்ரெஷியஸ், ஒரு மான்யூமெண்டல் லுக் ப்ராஜெக்டுக்கு கொடுக்கணுன்றதுக்காக தான் யூஸ்ட் கோல்ட். இட் டர்ன் so many heads. It's just about that. It's just the way we as a society pursue the element of gold, the richness.
Okay, so thank you very much. It's 9:18 here right now. So thank you. We're like concluding the session right now. Thank you very much, Anna, for your time, and thank you for answering all the questions, and thank you for explaining about what Tamil Futurism is. And you have given lots of ideas on how we can portray our culture in our projects, in architecture, in whatever we do. And thank you very much for your precious time. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Thanks a lot. This was an amazing session. Thank you for reaching out to me to make this happen. I had so much fun doing this. The questions were amazing. The questions were great. Even if you have any other questions in terms of SCI-Arc or in terms of Tamil Futurism in general, just reach out to me anytime. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation or have a quick chat with you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thank
Take
you
care,
very
stay
much.
safe, stay indoors.
Stay
Yeah,
safe.
try to be safe. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.